John, welcome to another episode of Freshly Pressed. Today we have with us John, who's John Hanna from Sydney, Australia. Um, Welcome to the show, John. And
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's good to be on Freshly Pressed. So thank
it's
you.
lovely to for once it's lovely to have somebody in the same time zone. So
That's a struggle when half the comics world is overseas, isn't it? Yeah.
I know, I know.
Mm,
It's
mm.
also funny that I used to live really close to where you are. So
Oh, really? For real? Oh, whereabouts in Sydney are you now?
I'm
Or is that
currently
top secret? You
in
can't
the
say it,
in
right?
southwest in Liverpool. Uh,
Oh, okay.
but I used to live in Summerhill, which is probably right next door to where you are.
It is. It is. It's right next door. I really love this area, so it's kind of
Yeah,
hard to stay out of this area. I'm always looking whenever they raise my rent. I'm like, oh, where can I go? Is there anywhere I can go? And yeah, there's nowhere. Really no.
I know exactly how it is. So when I decided to move out of Summerhill because I had to buy a property, it was a big decision because I loved that place. So, yeah. Um,
Yeah, and to buy here is super expensive. Like, oof, I don't
yeah,
even want to think about it.
I
I'm
don't.
probably of that generation that'll never own a place. So, and I'm fine with that, to be honest, because then I could have the flexibility of being able to, as long as it fits my budget, live where I want, which is good. But yeah.
That's very true. That's very
Mm.
true. Awesome. Tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into comics in the first place.
Yeah, no worries. Uh, ooh, how did I got into comics? So obviously when I was a kid, I think the first comic I ever read was an old Golden Age Flash comic book that my brother-in-law gave me when I was like 10 years old. So
Mm.
I thought that was amazing and it was great. And I read that thing over and over again. And I'd always have contacts with comics at our local news agency, and I'd be always like running over and browsing what's new. So my collection would be a hodgepodge of different issues because each story was like 3 issues long or something. But
Yeah,
the news agency, they never collected all of them. They'd only have issue 2 or issue 1, and then I'd never see it again. And so, yeah, that kind of, I'll probably explain to you later about one of my ideas about staying out in the scene. But yeah, I have a real thing about not completing my stories. So like, because back then, like I could never find the next issue, and I'm like,
yeah,
oh.
yeah.
So anyway, yes. Anyway, but I think maybe the first comic I ever drew was like a gag comic about Doctor Who
Mm.
called Doctor Pooh and the Turtles. It was obviously stupid little poo jokes, but that was like when I was like 13 or something, I think. And
Wow.
then yeah, but then I used to draw heaps as a kid, but then I just stopped drawing. I don't know why. I don't know. I think my interests started laying elsewhere. Whether it be chicks or video games or stuff like that. Um, and then kind of what started off this whole midnight runners thing that I'm doing now is I can't remember how old I was, but it was I was cleaning my room and I found my old high school diary. And I kept a diary in high school, right? And so I started reading through it, and it was hilarious and it was really interesting. And I was involved in this love triangle at the time. And so it was all the latest drama about that. And then, like this, I was just like, oh my God, this could be like a soap opera, like it could be like a romantic comedy or something, and so I just thought, oh shit, well, I don't have, you know, I went to film school right out of high school, but I don't have any contacts with the industry or anything. So I thought, stuff it. I'll bring it to life as a comic book.
That's amazing.
And then and then I don't know. I just started drawing, and I was pretty inconsistent, to be honest. Took me about 5 years to draw it, but granted, it was 300 pages long, so
Wow.
it was a pretty cool story, true story about my high school love life. And yeah, that was my first comic. And I took the courage to self-publish it back in like 2012 or something. And that's when I started going to cons. And going to cons, I was like, well, I can't just take one comic with me. I got to have a couple.
Yeah.
And and so I just started making new stories, you know. And actually, I can show you the very first one. Uh, yeah, it's kind of old now, but it's just you and me.
Wow.
Yeah, so as you can see, my art looks like this
Yeah.
way. This is obviously very, very amateur, very early in my comic career. Look at that, like very, very basic, not much going on, but the
Yeah.
story is the story is really solid,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
I had a lot
That's
of
still
great
pretty
feedback.
good. That's still pretty good. Yeah.
But yeah, as you can see, it's quite thick. So and yeah, and kind of since then, I've kind of changed my career and stuff, and I became a graphic designer.
Mm.
And I became actually specifically a motion designer doing animation and that.
Wow.
And during that whole creative period, you know, I just created more and more and more stories, and yeah, added to my roster of stuff. And I've got a pretty broad range of stuff, everything from you know, rom-coms, like, you know, the true high school experience. I've got rom-coms, I've got action, I've got like fantasy stuff, I've got comedy, I've got like cyberpunk, sci-fi, you know, I've got all ages stuff as well, which I do in collaboration with another group called Bulk Comics. We're really
Right.
great, good friends of mine, and yeah, I've got horror even. I've started doing horror. I've got a few short horror stories which you might have seen at Oz Comic Con. So
Mm.
um, yeah, I kind of just draw whatever I'm kind of interested in at that time, you know.
That's
And
amazing.
it's cool because that means that every comic has a bit of me in it, like how I was feeling at that time, or you know, like you know what my ethics, or you know what my ideas were back then, you know. So um, yeah, so like I've got, you know, obviously the rom com, you know,
Mm.
because I wanted to date, I wanted to meet someone, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
I've got my action, my car racing one, because my other hobby other than comics is drift racing, like
Oh, wow.
racing.
That's
So I
amazing.
do that stuff for real. So I'm like trying to inject that into the story, and you know, and then I've got like, you know, cyberpunk one, which is kind of all about family and kind of you know, how far you'd go for the people you love,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and then Machine Heart's probably a perfect example because I wrote that when I was changing careers into design, and I
Right.
was like thinking about who am I, like can I be a designer? Can I choose to be a designer? Like, is it like, does it feel right? Does it feel legit that I go from one completely different industry to something else? Am I going to fit in? And that was just kind of me exploring, you know, what identity for me, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and yeah, so like every little bit of comics got a bit of me in it, even the naughty ones. So I've
It's
got an adult.
especially Yeah, it's especially important in graphic design to actually find your identity because that forms a huge part of how you approach design in general, right? Like and your work reflects a lot of that as well. So
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I mean, we've got to pull inspiration from somewhere, you know. Yeah, so but yeah, that's kind of like, so my job is creative and my pastimes are creative, so it's like mm, fairly creative as far
yeah,
as overall. Yeah, so you can see there's quite a few different stories I've self-published over the years. So
yeah.
mm.
I do have you 4 volumes of You Can't Kill Us. I don't have the volume 5. I should have picked it up.
Well, that's pretty new. That's one of the ones I released early this year. So
Yeah. You seem like a big fan of anime. Uh
yeah,
in
I used
drawing
to,
and yeah.
I have a huge manga collection. So um, in the other room, I've got like a multiple bookcases just stacked to the brim with manga. Um, you know, I love, you know, and again, that also inspires me too. Like the old Tezuka stuff, you know, like even like you know, Katsuhiro Otomo with Akira, and
Mm,
um, Hiroya Oku with Gantz. That's a big one for me. And Nihei Tsutomu, who did like Blame and Knights of Sidonia and
yeah,
Bioman stuff. Yeah, just yeah, I love that stuff. Like I just love the way they approach exposition and pacing. And yeah, you've probably seen from You Can't Kill Us, the first issue.
Yeah.
The guy's just walking around, right? He's not doing anything. You know, he's not
Yeah.
talking to
Yeah.
people. He's just walking around, experiencing the world. And obviously, that was a big. I got that big influence from Blame, the manga
Mm.
Blame for that, something like that. Because I just want to. I need to set the world that we're in. I need to establish that straight away,
Yeah.
so that like, everything else in there would make sense when readers are confronted with it. So yeah.
Yeah, very true. Any of the top mangas that you read do spend a lot of time helping establish the world, like just a lot of like shots of people doing things within that world itself. And like yeah, that's beautiful world building, like by looking at it, you can get an idea of how the lives are, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I feel that's really important to your characterization, you know. Unless, of course, your character is stuck on a spaceship all alone, you know, that's different. but
Yeah.
yeah, if it's a world that's actually lived in, that's supposed to have people who lived in, that's pretty important.
Yeah.
So, but obviously, it all goes hand in hand, like with your character development and your story and stuff. So, maybe I was a little bit too heavy-handed in the first issue of You Can't Kill Us with that, but I was like, nah, I need to set this now. I need to do it right now. So,
Yeah, yeah. No, I think the further you go along in that storyline, issues do get tighter and tighter. I think when you go to like volume 3 or volume 4, you are like in the thick of the story, and I think it's fine. Like that it takes it time to, it's time to set up the world and the characters and things like that. Just makes it more effective.
yeah, totally, totally. I did have some feedback when I first released the first issue, and they messaged me on Facebook, just going, "Hey, does anything happen? Is there anything happen in volume 2? Because like nothing happened in this volume." And I'm like, "Yes, please hang in there. Believe me, there's something. There's stuff coming."
Yeah,
So yeah, no, absolutely, you're right. I needed that time. The first 2 issues pretty much just sitting are just there to establish the characters and kind of the world, and then as you rightly said, from volume 3 onwards, the story starts to begin. And then it's a shame you haven't picked up volume 5 yet, because volume 5 is where it puts the foot on the gas. So
nice.
yeah, and then it's going to be, so at the moment I'm still writing it, but I've got up to I'm up to issue 11 right now, which is
That's
the
amazing.
second last issue, which so I've got it all mapped out and everything. I just need to put pen to paper.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, so but where is it? But from 5 onwards, all the way right to the end, it's just go, 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 go. I've
yeah,
actually had to try to like, whoa, 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 slow down a bit. Don't just show everything all at once.
yeah.
but, but it's because it's got such a complex story, and there's heaps of characters, and there's a few
Mm,
like all their storylines intertwine and kind of meet towards the end. I've had
yeah,
to like map out the story using like flashcards, so that
nice.
I know exactly. And it's great because it's really easy to edit them too.
Yeah,
I can have an idea, and I'll, oh shit, and I'll just like write it down and I'll slip it in, and
yeah.
I'll go okay. And so like most of my writing's done when I'm lying in bed trying to get to sleep at night. So
Yeah, we,
yeah.
we all have we all have times when you have the most ideas, I think.
Yeah, right. It's so annoying. I'm like, fuck, I just want to go to sleep. I just want to go to sleep.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I was about to ask you how far along do you have, like, do you plan your arcs like much in advance, or like do you, like, if like, even for like Limit and other books, like do you have like 12 issues planned? Do you plan those issues, or do you like plan an arc and then break them down into issues and later, like?
So I do have a bit of a funny way of doing things, and it's kind of a bit different for each issue. So um, the first story that I did, Just You and Me, which is the one because I was my first comic ever. I didn't plan shit. I just kind of went with the rough guidelines of my diary, and I didn't plan it out at all. I just kept going. I actually thought it was going to be 3 issues, ended up being 6, right? Just because just how it worked out. I just kept drawing and like, oh, that's a good place to cut to the next chapter, and oh, how am I going to get to the ending? I would, but then you've got stories like Limit, where it is all mapped out,
Mm,
and Limit's been a story that I've had in my head for 20 years, because it was a job from it was a nice story from film school,
Mm.
um, which I'll explain if you want in a little bit later. But yeah, that's been in my head the whole time. So and then I'm just like, all right, just I've got all these beats, story beats just lined up, and then as I start writing it, I'd like start like, all right, well, what happens specifically in this issue?
Yeah.
And then you've got stories like You Can't Kill Us, which is like incredibly complex, and there's so many moving parts. So I'm like, I need to use flashcards to organize all my ideas, And then when I go to write it, I just pull out my flashcards. Oh, what's next? Oh, yep, this person does this, and then I'll like flesh that out while I'm going. I'm like,
Mm.
oh, this person says this one dialogue. Oh, fight scene. Then I go, okay, 3 pages of fight scene. Like that kind of stuff.
Mm. Mm.
Um, but then you've got other stories where I just draw. I just don't think about it too much.
Yeah.
Like Cursed, like the 2 short horror stories I've got. Well, Cursed is I just had a rough idea and I just started drawing basically. I didn't really think too much about it. I was just like, and I had a cool idea for like an ending and that was it, you know.
Mm.
Don't Sleep, I didn't think about it at all because that's a true story about a paranormal experience I had last year. So that was terrifying. But yeah, so there's varying levels of or premeditation, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
You know. Well, what's another? Is there any other good
That's
examples?
amazing. I see so many, like, I talk to so many different writers. Everyone has their own way of doing things, and like you can always look at, like, you can do like courses and things like that. People tell you to do things a certain way, but at the end of the day, whatever works for you works for you. Like, I that video just went live this morning, and I interviewed someone yesterday, and her writing style was like, she basically did role playing. So she's an RPG player,
Oh
and
yeah,
she paired with her co-writer, and they both write from perspectives of their own, like two different characters. So
oh
she
yeah.
just writes one character, and her co-writer writes the another one, and they just do role play and write their characters that way. And that way, she has like 50 issues like planned and written all the way through. So it's amazing how, like, everyone approaches this thing in their own way. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, and I've kind of cultivated my process over shit, man. I've probably self-published maybe close to 2,000 pages by now. I think I'm up to. I think last time I counted how many
Yeah.
pages I've drawn, it was like 1,800 or something. So and that's just you figure that stuff out as you go, and particularly for me because my job in the creative industry, and my design, the studio I work at is just insanely busy. Like it's
Mm.
probably more productive than any design studio I've ever seen, and just the amount of work that goes through the door and the quality of work that people have expectations is pretty high. So I'm always trying to find the best way to do stuff, like whether it be workflow, whether it be in preparing for a job organization, doing story stuff for explainer videos and stuff that we do. It's all about streamlining the process, And every time I'm doing a comic, I'm always just thinking of ways to streamline stuff,
Yeah.
and it's good because sometimes you'll try it a different way and go, well, why the fuck am I doing it that way? It's so much slower. Why don't I try doing it this way? And so I'm always thinking about that kind of stuff. Because obviously, when you're doing a comic which is 300 pages, that takes ages, right? So you're like,
Yeah.
shit, I'm gonna save some time somehow. Otherwise, I'm not going to finish this for years,
Yeah. 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 Very true.
If- mm. So one way, so Limit, for example, I'm terrible at drawing vehicles. Okay, like mechanical stuff, like robots and like computers and shit. I'm terrible at drawing cars, right? I can't draw them to save my life. But as you can see, the cars look pretty legit in this one. So what I did is I found that the software I use, Clip Studio Paint, accommodates 3D models. I'm like,
Mm.
shit, I want to just grab some, rather than drawing what I think looks like a car. Why don't I just draw and like get a model, position it exactly how I want it with perspective and everything, using perspective rulers and all that stuff, so I can get the sitting in the scene exactly how it's supposed to be,
Yeah.
make it look legit. And all of a sudden, boom. And suddenly it's like, well, it's so much faster than me experimenting, trying to draw this very specific model of car at this very specific angle. And it's like, shit, no,
That's
I'll just
amazing.
move the car up. Look at this angle, look cool down here, looking here. All right, cool. Bump, 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 bump. Done, you know? Obviously, it's not that simple, but
Yeah, of course.
you
But
get the idea.
the results are good. The results are great, actually. Like they look beautiful.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, the end result is pretty amazing. So
And that particular place where that particular race happens in that comic is a real place where I used to go street drifting. So everything the cars actually do in this whole issue is stuff that I've personally done myself. So
wow.
that's just so like that turnaround section. That's where me and my friends used to turn around at the bottom of the hill. So that's coming down to this, yeah, like that's coming up the hill there. We would like flat stick up that hill a million miles as fast as we can go. And yeah, and I've had a few battles through there. I only lost. I only lost once, so yeah,
I'll take your word for it.
yeah. Well, I'm still alive, so I can live to tell the tale, which is good. So
Amazing.
yeah, but
Okay.
yeah,
Nice.
always trying to find ways to work better and faster and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah. I think like a lot of your love for these things do show up, like it does show up in your comics as well. I was actually quite amazed that you mentioned Knights of Sidonia, because when I read You Can't Kill Us, I could see some of the reflections of like your
I
your
try very hard not to blatantly copy stuff. I try really hard. The space station is like probably a little bit too close to what Sidonia looks like.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's amazing. I know I love spotting these things, and like I love when people get inspired by these things and they use it in different settings.
Mm.
Um, I clearly don't see it as copying. I see it as homage to, like, a certain thing that you love so much that you're incorporating it in your story. Um,
Yeah. Well, that Sidonia is like such a masterclass in storytelling and empathy and stuff like that. It's yeah, obviously I want to do something on that kind of level. I've always
yeah,
aspired to something like on that kind of level. Same with Gantz. I'm still working at it, still getting there. Maybe one day. But yeah, I can definitely take inspiration from these other stories. I mean, like nothing's ever new. Like everything's a copy of a copy of a copy of something.
absolutely, absolutely.
So I'm just doing my best trying to make mine unique. And it is, I think You Can't Kill Us specifically, it does have a point of difference compared to a lot of stuff,
Yeah,
even though I've taken from many concepts and ideas from many places. I've tried to inject as much unique stuff into it as possible.
yeah,
Um, like one of my ideas with You Can't Kill Us was to have a holy shit moment for the reader every single issue. There's
yeah,
like there's one thing in particular in the book where the writer's like, the reader's like, oh my god, like
yeah.
what the hell? Whether it be shock or like going to go, whoa,
Yeah,
you might have seen a couple of them reading
I did.
volume.
Yes.
Yeah. um, yeah, and not just like in visuals, like something shocking visually, but also
Yeah,
just in concept, in ideas and stuff.
yeah,
Like as you know, one of the concepts in You Can't Kill Us is that flesh in this world, like flesh and blood and bone, is a commodity, right? So
yeah,
only
yeah.
the rich can afford to have it, whereas the poor people have to have mechanical bodies, which are cheaper but more durable.
Mm,
So obviously, what does that lend itself to? Like human trafficking, and obviously the rich, they don't value things the same way that normal people do. I would
yeah,
say.
yeah.
So they're like willing to, oh, well, I'm getting old, I'll just throw it away. Like, it's like, are you kidding me, man? You know how much that costs? Like, money doesn't grow on trees, but for them it does.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
they're like,
yeah,
so
yeah. No, that's amazing. Yeah, you already mentioned a little bit about You Can't Kill Us.
yeah,
Do,
I've been speaking about it a lot.
yeah, yeah. Do you want to like tell us a little bit about like what's Limit about and what's the story about?
Yeah, so Limit's about a disgraced race car driver that becomes a getaway driver for a heist. So and obviously, like I've mentioned before, one of my other hobbies is car racing, drifting, and stuff. And so I try to inject that into the story. But Limit has its roots, from when I was like 17, 18, when I first got my license. And I was at film school at the time. And in the very last semester, we had like an assessment to do a mock um, press release for a mock film, right? So we had to create a mock film. We had to jump through all these hoops to make this press release that was given out to the media, right, for people
Mm.
to review your film and stuff. So we're like, okay, yeah. So I did mine. I was like, I'd just seen Fast and Furious, I just got my license, and I was suddenly like starting to get really interested in cars and racing and stuff. Because obviously, when you get your car for the first time, the freedom is unreal. And
Mm.
one thing I always longed for was independence. So as a kid, yeah, that was amazing. Having a car, I was like, oh man, I can go anywhere, I can do anything. This is awesome. And suddenly, I started to fall in love with speed, right, which is not good. So anyway, so at the time, I was really into this, and I was like, oh, I'll create a cool car chase movie, and
Yeah, yeah,
thinking like the old school bullet films. I was
yeah.
thinking about French Connection, those kind of stuff, and then
Mm.
Fast and Furious stuff as well. And I'm like, I want to inject all this stuff. So I created this idea, this story, right? Race car driver,
Yeah,
on his luck, becomes a getaway driver for a heist.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so this was like 2001, so it was a long time ago. Anyway, whipped up the idea. So part of it, we had to do a synopsis. We had to present to the class.
Mm.
So the teacher who was supposed to assess us was away that day, so another teacher was assessing us. But
Yeah.
I got up in front of the class and I started going through it and telling people everything. I was like heaps animated, and I was like, oh, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then what this and the class, I was just doing my thing, but the class was absolutely fixated. And
Wow.
I'm not like exaggerating that people were like they were invested in the
Mm.
story and the way I was
Mm.
telling
Mm.
it,
Mm.
and how enthusiastic I was being about it, and everyone was like, everyone was genuinely really interested and excited by the story and stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's
Yeah,
cool. I think someone even started clapping, so that was like, a very American thing to do. But anyway,
yeah.
so finished film school, moved on with my life, and my parents kind of fought like pressured me to get a real job, and so after a, and so I ended up getting a job at a factory because mum and dad wanted me to pay rent, and they didn't think that making movies was going to pay the rent. And
Yeah, yeah.
the film industry in Australia was kind of a bit terrible at that time. Still kind of is, to be honest. There's reasons for that, but that's another story. Anyway, point of the story is I got a call from my mother at while I was at the factory, and she's like, "John, your teacher just called," and I'm like, "Oh, really?" And he's like, "Yeah, he wanted to congratulate you on a fantastic assignment," and I'm like, "Well, that's kind of strange. The teacher called me to congratulate me." I'm like, "Okay," and I'm like, and my mum said to me, "Oh, I asked him if there's anything specific I need to tell you about it," and the teacher said, "Tell John to find a producer and get this film made." And I
Wow.
was and I was suddenly like, "Oh my god, yes! I've got to do it, yes, yes!" And I was so excited. And I was like,
Yeah,
"I need
yeah,
to make this a reality, right?"
yeah.
So went home that night, jumped on the old family computer with Windows 95 and started word processing my notes tomorrow. But I was 18. I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
I had no experience. I'd written a few like like feature film scripts for fun sort of things.
Mm.
My big ambition back then was to be a big famous movie director,
Mm.
um, like John Woo or Steven Spielberg or something. Obviously, with my parents forcing me to get a real job, but those dreams kind of died. Um, but I was like, yeah, I need to make this happen. So I need to make a script. I need to write a script. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, just sussing it and like, just
Yeah.
totally. It was. I look back at it now, and it was terrible. It was really bad. And I think I do have an excerpt of it somewhere on my computer, but it was bad. So anyway, this story is really long-winded. I'm sorry about it. Anyway, I kind of just like, fuck it, gave up. Well, I can't do this now, whatever, and just left it, right? But in the meantime, I started getting drifting, blah blah blah. I got cars, so all my money and all my time was right into drifting and stuff. And
Yeah.
obviously, it took me another 10 years before I kind of went back to comics. And then, like a little while ago, when I was actually in Japan, actually on a Japan trip, and I always find plane travel really good for like writing and drawing and stuff. It's a really good time to do it.
Mm.
And I had a notebook, and I was just like, I wonder if I could bring Limit to life now. I
Yeah.
wonder if I'm capable of telling a story. I've like self-published like 1,000 pages or something. I've already written quite a few stories already. I'm like, I wonder if I can give it a go. So I was like, stuff it. All right, I'll give it a go.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And now Limit is as you see it. And the
Yeah.
great thing is, like, with the first issue, I gave it to a friend of mine to proofread just the spelling mistakes and stuff to make sure it was all right. And the feedback, and this chick was not interested in racing cars, doesn't give a fuck, right? Doesn't care. She just loves books, whatever. But she
Mm.
read it and she was like, first issue was like, she's like, that was really exciting. I was really into it. I was like, for
Yeah.
real, you were like, that's not who I would have thought who would be interested in this.
Yeah.
And she's like, it was great. Oh, what happens next?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's amazing.
Yeah. So like, yeah. So yeah, Limits kind of just been in here the whole time and just waiting for its time to come out and stuff. So
Well,
yeah.
never say never. Like, from since the time you actually were trying to make it into a movie till now, comic books have become a thing, and now comic book movies are a thing. So
That's
maybe,
right.
you know,
That's right. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's possible. Might happen. Maybe one day. Who knows?
yeah.
But
I'm
I mean, we
pretty
don't.
sure ABC and SBS and a lot of our local production companies they're always in lookout for good comic books to produce their shows on. So
That's true. I spoke with another artist, another Sydney. Well, no, he's actually not Sydney. He's actually rural New South Wales. I don't know if I can say his name or anything, but basically, he was telling me that he like ended up getting his comic book adapted for animated series.
oh wow,
Um,
that's amazing.
yeah, hasn't been released yet. It's still in production now. So yeah, and I was just like, "What? Are you kidding?" Like, wow, that's awesome. And he's just an indie like me, right? He's
Yeah,
at every other convention just like me as well. And I'm like, wow.
that's amazing.
But yeah, he did tell me there was a lot of work involved because obviously it's not gonna happen. Like someone's not just gonna walk in and do all the work for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I mean, people as an artist, you wouldn't want that to happen anyway. You'd be like, no, I wanna control what's going on. It's my story, shit. Um, yeah, but like, yeah, no, absolutely, you're right. It can definitely happen. But obviously, I just wanted to tell the story. I want to tell the story, and this is the way I'm doing it now. This is how I can do it. This is how
that's
I can
the
get it
best thing. That's the best way to do it.
out.
And yeah, we yeah, that's amazing. We're coming close to time, so
Oh, really? Already?
yeah, already.
Shit, sorry, I've been waffling on. I'm sorry.
No, this is perfect. That's what I want. I want the listeners to and viewers to actually know more about you, your work, and your inspiration. So that's perfect.
Thanks. Yeah, no
um,
worries.
no, thanks a lot for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your
Yeah,
time on a Saturday morning
no,
for
thanks
this.
for inviting me. Sorry it took me so long to kind of come back to you. So, yeah.
You're always welcome. Whenever you have a new volume or anything, you always welcome to come on the show and talk
Oh,
about.
thank you. I do have a big project coming up soon. So hang in there. It's I can't tell you much about it. It's top secret. But it is with a legit publisher. It's not being self-published by me, and it's involving a pretty big Australian author. So
Awesome.
yeah, keep your eye out for that one. I'll probably have to come on again and talk about that. So
That's amazing. I'm looking forward to that.
yeah,
Meanwhile, do check out John's work on his website, midnightruncomics.com.au. I'll link it in the description. Um, Yeah, and thanks a lot for coming on the show again, John. Appreciate you.
All good. No worries, mate. Thank you. All right. Have a good one.
You too.